People with CPTSD can be very difficult to be within a relationship or a marriage. I get a lot of letters from hurt and scared people who are going through a lot of pain because their partner has CPTSD and is not yet able to calm their symptoms. And that's hard. Now, do I think people with CPTSD are always worth being with? No, not always. But great relationships are possible when you both understand what CPTSD is and you both are working on strategies to halt the hurtful and chaotic dynamics that can very easily pull couples into that dark vortex. With knowledge, with goodwill, with love, healing can be totally positive for both people. So I want to reassure you. And can I just say to those of you who are trying to be better, who have been writing to me, who are trying to be good partners to people like me, I love you for that. Thank you for caring enough to ask how to be a good partner to those of us who are affected by hard stuff in our childhood. Because a loving and stable relationship goes a long way to help human beings who are hurt and feeling alone. So thank you for that. All right, so first I just want to acknowledge that the symptoms of childhood PTSD are on a continuum. They come and they go. They might be little things and they could be very serious things. And before I get into the nuts and bolts of how to be with someone who's having these symptoms, I just want to say that under no circumstances should you put up with abuse. Not either of you. And I'll go into that a little more at the end. But yes, people who had a hard childhood are totally worthy and lovable and can be worth a bit of trouble sometimes. And yes, we can be complicated and confusing and needy and exasperating sometimes, but also there can be a lot of wisdom that you get to be around from all we've been through. We're often very capable and resourceful and warm. So here are some tips to help you understand your loved one and offer support while also taking care of yourself. Got to take care of yourself. There's no good relationship without that. All right. First, it may be helpful to know that a lot of what your partner is dealing with is called dysregulation. And this is a real and measurable nervous system phenomena. It's not just complaining. It's not just playing a victim. It's a nervous system change that comes from the injury of trauma as a young person. I'm not talking about necessarily a physical injury, but just abuse, emotional abuse, neglect can cause brain changes that I'm going to categorize as injury. And I say injury because the injury, if it's not healed, it can go on and affect things throughout life. Those problems can even get worse. They don't automatically get better. But like other injuries, it can be healed. All right? You can have healing around those things. So what is dysregulation? It can cause a person to feel spaced out, discombobulated, emotionally overreactive, struggling to think straight. You're going, aha, right? You know these things. I'll put links to other videos and articles of mine down below if you want to learn more about dysregulation. But dysregulation happens to everybody to some degree, and we all naturally recover from it eventually. And this recovered state is called re-regulation. And it's just that for people with childhood PTSD, it can happen a lot more frequently and be a lot harder to get back out of. So people with CPTSD are spending a lot less time regulated and a lot more time dysregulated than maybe you are. But I guarantee you, if you're around a dysregulated person enough and it's turning into a lot of like heated arguments and hurtful things are being said to you, you have a high probability of getting dysregulated too. And as you learn about this, I want to encourage you to keep reflecting, like if maybe some of these symptoms are happening for you. If you didn't come into this with childhood trauma, you may be, kind of matching your partner. People do that. And it can be traumatic having all that difficulty in a relationship. So another thing I want you to remember is that the tendency to get dysregulated is not your partner's fault. It isn't your fault either, even if your partner thinks it's your fault that when they're upset. Now, everybody does that sometimes too, right? Blames the other person. It feels like it when that's what's happening. You're getting dysregulated by somebody's saying something. You're getting very dysregulated and you're like, you're doing this to me. You're getting me so messed up in the head. but that's not really what's going on. It feels that way. The symptoms you're seeing are what PTSD looks like when it's not very well under control. That just sort of like amplification of emotions, blame, confusion about why this is happening, and you'll very often end up in a circular argument. It's like, but you said, but I said, but then you said this, and don't you know how it made me feel? And it goes round and round, and one of the telltale signs that you're actually not working out a problem, but you're just looping on a anxious, fearful, resentful thought that's coming from PTSD. The telltale sign is that no matter how much you talk about it, you cannot progress. It's just going round and round. So you've no doubt experienced that before too. And I mean, technically, how you deal with your partner's dysregulation could influence how quickly they get re-regulated. If you just start yelling and threatening to leave, which maybe you've done, that would be a normal reaction to some of these symptoms, you're not likely to calm things down. So unless you mean it, I'd recommend that you not do that. Just put a moratorium, and ask that of your partner too. Those, threats that you don't intend to carry out, I'm leaving if you don't change. Threats are poisonous, and if you actually are going to leave, you can actually leave. You can actually leave and, call them afterwards and say, I've left. And all the threats leading up to it is really just adding drama and fuel to the fire, and it doesn't help dysregulation. So yeah, if you're really serious about it, that might be something you could work out with a counselor. But I'm just saying, threats, emotional threats, when you amplify those emotions, you're putting the person with CPTSD in a very difficult spot where it's very hard to regulate, harder than it would be for you perhaps, and then you're going to get the results that you don't want, no matter what. I know you don't want those results. You also don't have to be a doormat here. And it's important for you to remember, even if your partner can't see it in this moment, that it's not your fault her feelings got this intense, and you're not responsible for making it all better right now. It's not your fault, and it's not your job. It's our job, okay? It's the people with CPTSD to self-regulate. And I'm going to be giving you links to videos that you can share with your partner. I wouldn't push it. You could share maybe one link very lightly and say, I watched this video that was helpful for me. There's one for people with CPTSD. You might want to watch it. And you might be thinking that your partner has CPTSD, but they're not thinking that. Maybe they would feel accused by that. And that's a delicate situation. I think that it's helpful if you don't use labels on people sometimes and just say, I know you had this rough childhood, and I wondered if maybe you had this thing that this person Crappy Childhood Fairy is talking about. And there's also, I have a bunch of basic videos about what is CPTSD, what is dysregulation, so I can share those with you too, so that you have kind of a library to share and you can pick one that you think might resonate. So it's not your fault, and it's not your job to get us to re-regulate. You can illuminate for us that you know about this thing and you saw help, but it's not your job to make it happen. And pushing is really just, it's not going to work in any relationship, pushing and pushing or making ultimatums and threats. So the person with CPTSD has got to learn to re-regulate. Nobody can regulate our PTSD brains for us, and we're the ones who've got to take the steps to change it. And this is kind of a stretch for some people. Maybe they've gone to therapists where there's a lot of talk about what happened in the past or the difficulties in the marriage, but the therapist may not know about dysregulation and the pure autonomy of that a person needs to learn to heal their own dysregulation. And I'm not saying that, certain situations and rough relationships can be extremely triggering and set off dysregulation. And a person with CPTSD might need to withdraw from that and get out of that. And that's one of the things I recommend sometimes, is to take some space when it's getting too intense. But the art of learning to notice that you're dysregulated and to change that, to bring it down, is a total inside job. And it can take a lot of pressure off your relationship when that is recognized by both of you. You can't push, and they don't have to be pushed. They're going to have to do it. The good news is, once you know what it is and you have some tools to do it, you can get results like same day. You can get some results the same day. You can, we're talking about, like, this came on over decades, right? The problem. So you need to give it a lot of space and time to unfold and evolve. But relief can come, right away from using some techniques for dysregulation and re-regulating. So that's really good news. And if it's something that you can do together, that's really good. If you are the partner of somebody and you don't identify as having CPTSD, you can still use these techniques. I teach something called the daily practice. It's a very specific writing technique along with a very simple meditation method. They go together twice a day. And I have a free course, you can take it, I'll put that in the links. But it teaches a way to take the upset thoughts, the angry thoughts, the triggered thoughts, and get them out, ask for them to be removed, and rest your mind. And really, like, anybody could do that. If you've had an argument and you're upset, this is a really helpful tool to have. And I know lots of people, they don't identify as having any particular problem, but they love the daily practice. They do it twice a day, and you can too, if you want to. I think you'll have better luck encouraging a partner to get interested in it if you yourself do it, and rather than pushing, you just kind of demonstrate that you're nicer to be around when you use these techniques, and that tends to be what happens, whatever the underlying problem is. So that's my suggestion to you. We're the ones who have to learn re-regulation, and we're the ones who have the option of self-control, as hard as it may be to draw upon. When we're feeling the urge to just like lash out, and I mean the CPTSD people, when we want to lash out or run away from our loved ones, it's not our fault. It is something that our brain is doing to us, but I'm telling you, the change can happen where you start to notice, okay, that thing is happening. I'm having that thought that I really need to get away, and this relationship is really crap and I need to go. You could start to notice. And that's what healing looks like, is you still get that feeling, but you're like, oh, that's my CPTSD talking. I think I'll zip it up here. So I'll give the instructions to the person with CPTSD in a video that I'll link in a minute. But that said, here's what you can do, you, the partner. You can support your partner as they try to heal. You can ask or suggest that they try to heal, or read a certain book, or try a certain technique. But again, you cannot make it happen. You couldn't, even if you wanted to. Like, I'm not just saying it's bad etiquette, I'm saying it's not possible to make somebody do it. Even if you use threats, like, I'm going to leave you unless you do this technique that the crappy childhood fairy said. Somebody might do it so that you won't leave, but that's not the conditions when it's actually going to work for them under threat. It's a subtle thing, and people have got to want it. All right. So you can't make it happen, not on your timeline, not against their will, and you can't do it for them. If only, right? I wish I could make people change. I wish I could do the healing for them. There's so many people that I would, improve with my grand ideas about how to do that, but it just doesn't work that way. What you can do is be understanding. You can be encouraging, and you can be willing to step back and detach a little bit when things feel crazy, right? You know, those crazy moments. So instead of going in there and like demanding answers or, closure or a response to something that's bothering you, you can step back. You can step back. When it feels crazy or rushed, step back. And by that I mean have boundaries. So you might notice that when your partner's dysregulated, they can go from like happy to being totally silly to getting overwhelmed all of a sudden, and then they're enraged, and then they're emotionally flat. And it's all to them like it's like nothing even happened to trigger all that. You can't see it. You don't even know what set it off. But they're not crazy. They're not crazy. There's triggers that are kind of like planted in there right now. They can be healed eventually, they can be healed. But there's triggers in there that got stuck in there when they were small. It may have happened before they even had words. So it's very hard. If something was installed in your experience before you even have words, you can't remember it. You don't know what's happening. There's this thing called emotional flashbacks. You'll see somebody with CPTSD just seemingly out of the blue. Something sets it off, and they're all of a sudden in this like bad emotional state. And it seems irrational. It's not irrational, actually. It's It's a brain thing that's happening where the brain is like, it's retrieving this old emotional experience. And honestly, I'm telling you, the person is not causing this. It's not their fault that it's happening. But the person does have to, a person with CPTSD is the only one who can start to change it. So there are techniques for that. I have courses for people who want to start changing that, to have fewer flashbacks, to have less dysregulation. I'll put links to those below. So sometimes they'll be dysregulated without any outward signs, all right? So you may think they're fine, but then you notice they're like not hearing anything that you're saying, or they're tripping over things, or they're forgetting to show up for appointments. But with some people, it could be like a brain fog aspect of dysregulation that can be really pervasive. And it'll be tempting for you to think that they're acting intentionally, or they're avoiding you or something, or that you're not important to them, or that they don't respect you. And while all of this could be the case, it's most likely just a sign that they're dysregulated. And it's nice when you know, I mean, it feels good. Like if you can really get it, like this is dysregulation, and you can actually say, you know, once you have that common language together, you can say, I'm wondering, are you kind of dysregulated? Because it feels like you're not hearing a word I say. Or I know we talked about this plan that we were going to meet up at the tax accountant's office at 10 o'clock, and then you didn't show up, and it doesn't make sense to me. Were you dysregulated this morning maybe? Was something hard for you? And you're going to get a lot more meaningful information when you can kind of, without attack or judgment, kind of open up the conversation for when dysregulation is happening. It's actually really helpful when another person is kind of reflecting to you when it seems that way. Now, that said, it's really good to back off if the person's like, no, that wasn't dysregulation. I told you, I got a flat tire. And believe me, I'm telling people like your partner that dysregulation is not an excuse to be rude or inconsiderate. Just like anybody, you know, a person with CPTSD is capable of being plain old rude and inconsiderate. That too. But then there's these behaviors that look like that are not that. So healing while you're in a couple means that two people are meeting halfway, right? And your partner may need to make the effort to show you that they care. And you need to keep in mind that a brain thing might be temporarily blocking the signs of caring that you need to see, like emotional flatness, right? If I have gotten upset, like let's say my husband and I have an argument and I feel upset about it, I might like overreact emotionally, and then a little bit later I'll be very flat. And what that can look like to him, he's gotten really knowledgeable about what the signs are, and he's got his boundaries around that, and I've learned to really meet him halfway. But if I go emotionally flat, it will look like I'm indifferent. And it's important for a person with CPTSD to be able to show, like to recognize that they're flat right now. What it feels like is you're having your feelings, but your affect is flat. You seem flat. So it's really important to know that's good feedback for a person with CPTSD who does that. It's like, I need to see on your face or with your words that you care and that you're hearing me about what I'm asking for here. So that's some communication for a couple. But maybe the hardest thing about a person with childhood PTSD is that they can be unreasonable. I know I'm preaching to the choir here, but yeah, we can be unreasonable. We get upset and you get blamed for things that you have nothing to do with, and that's terrible. That's not right at all. And I'll tell you a secret. If you keep presenting yourself as someone who has the power to fix the PTSD, you will soon be having fights about why you haven't fixed the PTSD. And I'm going to bet that you've had that argument before, maybe many times, where your partner believes that you have the key to them feeling better if only you would turn the key, right? That's a way of thinking that I call outsourced responsibility for healing. And we do that. I tell people with childhood PTSD to step out of that thinking and own the process. People can encourage you and support you, but they do not have the key. We have the key. We've got to learn to re-regulate. And I'm telling you as their partner, allow them to own it, all right? Don't try to fix it. It's totally okay and appropriate to offer comfort to a person who's in a PTSD response, and consistent love and stability are really good things, and definitely they influence healing. But sometimes what love looks like is you support a person and give them space to just day by day notice how their PTSD affects them and recalibrate their dysregulation response. Maybe they're already in my courses for doing this and that's how you heard about me, but yeah, you can support your partner while they do this work and still hold a boundary against bad behavior that happens when they're dysregulated. Boundaries, boundaries. So the way you do that is when you notice the symptoms coming on in your partner and they're starting to behave in a way that makes you feel scared or upset, you can take a step back. Your feelings matter. They matter a lot. But your partner who's having CPTSD symptoms right now, this is not a good time to try to talk things out with them. You'll get much better results if you wait. And if they're pressing you to talk about their feelings or your feelings, you can say, things are feeling a little intense right now, and I want to talk to you, but I want to wait until things are calmer. Now notice you're not abandoning them, you're not shutting them down, you're making a plan to communicate in a better way. And if your partner doesn't want to let you do that, you get to do it anyway. You have my permission. Remember, they're not themselves right now, so it's for you to do the wise thing for yourself, and also remember that they will eventually feel calmer and you can talk to them then. So what's helped me in my marriage, since I'm the one who gets dysregulated, is that I try to take responsibility to notice when I'm dysregulated and not say much until I can get myself re-regulated. And this is sometimes easier said than done. And the urge to process the feelings, talk about them is sometimes so overpowering that I just want to do it, but it almost never works. But whether I step back or I try to talk in the moment, I try to remember that I'm responsible for calming down and I'm responsible for being kind and respectful while I do. It's not cool to blame other people for my problems. I don't want to get blamed either for their problems, just for the record. But that kind of thinking would keep me stuck if I were blaming other people. I have power when I take responsibility. I have autonomy. I have agency to actually change my life and heal. That's where all the power is, not in the past, not blaming other people. And I don't have license to take my frustrations out on other people just because I had bad things happen to me when I was little, right? We've all heard people do that. It's like, I had this happen, I can't help it. Well, it's not our fault it happened, but it is fully our responsibility to handle it now, to decide how we're going to treat other people. And we don't have the right to treat other people badly. So here's a summary of things that you can do when your partner is experiencing symptoms, all right? 1, you can notice the dysregulation. Sometimes even if you don't say anything, just noting to yourself, oh, they're dysregulated again. This can help you to stay neutral and even supportive without getting sucked in. 2nd, you can try to reduce overwhelm for your partner by slowing down, keeping your voice gentle, not asking a lot of questions or making demands. And again, you don't have to mention that you're doing this. You can just do it and see if it helps. 3rd, you can mention that you're noticing they're dysregulated maybe and ask what they need. You can say, hey, I notice this is making you a bit overwhelmed. Is there anything you need to make this easier? Those are nice words. Or you can say, would it help you if I gave you a hug right now? And because squeezing hugs can be really helpful. But you want to make sure that that hug is wanted and expected, just so it doesn't set off more dysregulation. Because sometimes a hug or a touch that's sudden or in the middle of a conflict can actually be very triggering. So you want to ask. You want to make sure that it's okay and let them say yes. And there's sometimes a temptation, I will say, when I get asked, I have an urge to I don't know, I'm trying to show look, I'm so hurt because of this situation. So I say, no, I don't want a hug, but I actually do. So I work on being honest and just saying, of course I want a hug, of course I do. Or if I can't do it that strongly, I say, okay, yeah, I'll take a hug, okay. If things start getting tense, it can really help to just get a little space or a tiny bit of separation. And the trick is to do this without setting off an abandonment trigger. So let's say you're on the phone and you can hear your partner getting wound up and you know it's about to turn into an argument. You can ask for 5 minutes apart and you can make a concrete plan for when the conversation will start again. And just 5 minutes, I'm telling you, it can discharge all that dysregulation that was bubbling up. If your partner uses my daily practice techniques of writing and meditating, you can very politely, gently suggest that they might want to do that, or you can do it and invite them to do it with you. But since any kind of comment about dysregulation can, to a dysregulated person, feel like a criticism, sometimes the kindest thing is to just tell a white lie and pretend that you have to go to the bathroom just to get a few minutes apart. Whatever you do, don't resort to giving the silent treatment or storming out or threatening the relationship. Even if you knew you were actually going to leave, which you probably aren't, but even if you knew that, announcing it to a dysregulated person is only going to lead to a blow up. So my advice is stay polite, stay kind, stay out of drama, and it'll pass. And your partner might complain and try to get the conversation started again, but believe me, they will thank you later when their brain and emotions are re-regulated, that you stayed calm and sturdy and uncritical and you didn't let things turn into a big fight. Everyone gets exhausted after that. And arguing can cost a person with childhood PTSD days of dysregulation, 3 days, a week, more, where they're only quasi-functioning. So calm is good. Calm is very valuable. Steadiness is good. Now, I mentioned at the beginning that there is no scenario where you're obliged to put up with abuse, either emotional or physical. And I don't care if you're a man or a woman, I don't care who started the argument, you don't deserve abuse. And if it happens, the right thing to do is to get out right in that minute with kids, if you have kids, and get to safety. Anything that needs to be talked about or worked out can be worked out when things are calmer. So that would be the time when the other person who's acting in an abusive manner could pursue professional help. But demanding that they do it right when they're in the middle of acting out, for you, if your partner cannot or will not control abusive behavior, then that is a sad thing. But it's not best for you or your kids to be trapped with that, trying to work it out. Okay? So all that said, if you are blessed enough to have a safe and loving and supportive relationship, that is just one of the most wonderful healing things that could happen for anyone, CPTSD or no, and it's a great gift for a person who has had trauma as a kid. Not everybody is called to that kind of relationship. Not everybody will find it. Some people are not healed enough yet to pull it off yet, right? But a good relationship is worth really putting your heart into. It's a good reason to work hard on yourself as a person. So thank you to all the partners out there who do that and make the world a more loving place because of it. Now, if you're wondering where the matching video to this one is, the one that's for the person with CPTSD who's working hard on being a good partner too, it's right here. So check it out, and I will see you soon.